Hey guys, I thought I'd show you a quick tutorial on a project I'm working on. This is a opener lyric video for a church that they're doing kind of a worship weekend. They're doing a opener with the song "Not in a Hurry" by Will Reagan, which is a great song. It just talks about not being in a hurry and kind of sitting in God's presence. So the opener will start with a voiceover and talk about how time is incessant and never stops, but we need to be able to stop and rest sometimes. There will be some stock footage on top of the video for that we've gotten from Stock Hub and StoryTape, some nice shots and some things that they've shot as well in Jacksonville. There'll be some supporting text for the main opener, like a voiceover, and then the lyrics at the very end. So I just want to show you what I was making. I'm not doing anything fancy. These are some pretty basic things in After Effects, but I thought maybe it might be interesting or something you might can use in the future. So what I have is two different font styles kind of grouped together. Let me find a nice clean shot here. Just kind of a handwritten font because they wanted to feel very organic and kind of analog. So my thought was maybe it's kind of like a piece of a journal or something that someone's kind of sketching and writing. So we have kind of a basic handwritten font here. Then we have a nice clean sans serif font. Then I have these little lines that I thought maybe would help out, kind of adding to some of the look. It's kind of like almost pencil lines. So I was going to show you how I made those and how I have them animating. So let me show you an example of the actual video. It's not quite done yet, but this will give you an idea of how it goes.
Time is relentless, incessant. It never sleeps.
So these lines are animating on and off, kind of not
around
really much rhyme or reason to it. Sometimes there's some little corners, some vertical lines, some horizontal lines. And then I also have some texture on top of it, this like speckles and whatnot. And I've put those in a little bit of a 3D space and have a camera slightly moving so that there's some movement to those so it doesn't feel quite as flat. And hopefully you can see that they're a little bit separate, but just those little things that add to a project. So the first thing I did was figure out my text. I went through several different iterations on what the text should look like. They didn't want anything too crazy, so there's some different options that we come up with, but this is what they liked, so then I added some of those lines after that. But the way I did the lines was I went into Photoshop, and then I made a document that just had some of these drawn lines. And the way I did that was, let me make a new layer here. Turn this one off. If you take your brush tool and use just like a basic brush, like a little circle, make it nice and small, and then you go to your brush settings over here. And if you don't see that, you can go to Window and the brush settings right there. And then I mess with shape dynamics and scattering, so it gives you this pencily, rough-looking line. So you can click on shape dynamics and change the jitter there, as well as some of the scattering. So I just made it just a little bit, somewhere around there, and then I just took a black brush and I drew a few of them that are straight. So I did, click and hold down Shift, and I could draw a straight line. So I did a few of those, maybe different lengths, and then I did a few more that were just sort of freehand to get even more organic look. So just several different iterations of it. And then I did a few corners, some freehand, like this, and then some very straight while holding on Shift. And then some with like small little bends, things like that. So then I exported that as a PNG. So I turned this off. I went to File, Export, Save As, and did a PNG. So I get that transparent background. Then I took that and I dropped it into After Effects. So let's see, pencil lines right there. So then I made that its own comp. So I drug that into a pre-comp here, and now I have this document back here, and the background is white just because the comp settings are set to white. So that's not really there. It's just so I can see my lines. So then pick the ones I wanted. So I took my pen tool, G on the keyboard, and I would click and kind of draw over these lines here. Didn't have to be too perfect. Something like that. And then I went to Layer, Effect, Generate, and Stroke. and then I want to do mask 1, which is what that line is. So if I hit click on this layer and I hit U on the or M on the keyboard, it'll show that I have a mask in this line right here. So then I'm going to do I want to change my color to red so I can see what I'm doing. Then I'm going to make that brush size pretty big. I want to make sure that line is covering up my pencil line. So that's plenty big enough right there. And then I want to set some ins and outs. So I'm going to go here and I want this to last maybe like 4 seconds. So I'm going to click on the end stopwatch there, hit U on the keyboard so I can see my keyframe, and I can go back to the very beginning and move this all the way down to 0. So now that little red line will slide open like that. Okay, and then I want to then have this end start coming back. So I'm going to go to the start, which is right here, set a little keyframe. I can hit U on the keyboard. Now I see that one right there. Push forward some, and then I can move that to 100. So it's kind of this floating line right there. Then I did a easy ease on these. So I highlight all my keyframes, click on the keyframe, right click, and do easy ease. And I would do my graphic editor and change these to be a little bit smoother here. And this is my speed graph. You can see that by clicking here and going to speed graph. This is just saying it's going to slowly start moving and then speed up and then slowly come down to a stop. So if I watch that back, see it kind of has a nice little organic movement there. So then after that I go over here to paint style. Instead of on original image, I'm going to go to reveal original image. So now that's the only thing that should show right there. So there you go. So I did that, and I kind of made a bunch of different versions. So I have a natural line, so like freehand, and then some straight lines, and then some corners. Let's see here. There it is. So just some ones by themselves. So I have all those separate. And then I went into the let's see, where am I doing all this text here, and I made some text layers. So first, before I ended up putting all these lines in here, I laid out all my text. So all of these blue and red layers, and even the yellow, are the text. So if I zoom in here, you can see that there's my time. I'm actually going to go ahead and turn off this layer really quickly here so we can see a little bit better. And these lines may be kind of hard to see, but hopefully you can get the idea. So these basically just have a nice opacity adjustment. So on here I went to let's see, U on the keyboard and opacity. You can get to that by hitting T. So I just have it go from 0 to 100 to 0 pretty quickly. So it's just a quick fade in and fade out. So I did that with all of my text and laid it out however I wanted it. And then I went in and started moving these lines around. So I just dropped those layers down here in the bottom. So for instance, the one we made, which is here, I believe, just drag it down. I put a linear dodge blending mode on that. So it blends through that background just a little bit. So you can see there's my straight line, and it's just kind of animating. So then they're all stacked on top of each other. So the green ones are my straight lines, the brown ones are my corners. That way I can keep up with what I'm doing. So I went through the entire thing and just started throwing these lines in there, and based on kind of whatever was on the screen is what my where I stuck my lines. So some of these randomly vertical lines, and then some of the corners are a little bit more intentional, so very random, but I think that's about it. Let's zoom up here. Yeah, I went through this entire thing and just put all these in here, and then once I kind of had a big group of them, I would just take that. I would select all these. These are would be a nice group, and then I would hit Command D, and I would move those up and slide them down. And they're in the general vicinity of the animation. I would maybe make some adjustments and move those around. I'll do that. And so I went through the entire song. Got up here to the when the actual song starts. Laid out my lyrics, changed my choruses to yellow so I could keep up with those. But that's really pretty much it. So then I would take this entire pre-comp and I'd put it in my sort of my main file animation. So this is really what I'm going to be sending to the render queue. So I try to keep everything as condensed as possible. So I have all of my text inside of this comp here, which is what we were just looking at. So you can see it all there. Yeah, there we go. So you can see it all in here and how it's animating. That way it just keeps it nice and neat. And so the textures and stuff on top of that, I'll show you how I did that really quickly. So first, let me just make a new comp and I'll explain it this way. Let's see, 1920 by 1080. 10 seconds is fine. Okay, where'd it go? Let's say cancel. Okay, there we go. I'm going to change this background to black so I can see here. So I have a few grunge layers that I have imported, just some random specs and things. Just going to throw a few of them in here. Let's see what else here. Maybe a dirt texture. Some of them are pretty subtle. So we'll just go with those few for now. So then I wanted to move these in 3D space. So the way to do that was to toggle the switch down here and click on the 3D layer, which is where this little box is. Turn that on. So now they're all 3D layers, and you can tell by the axis. So you have a Y, X, and Z, that little blue one there. And so I wanted to move those a little bit in 3D space. So I went to active camera and left. So now I'm looking kind of at the left side of it. So I can move these in 3D space a little bit. Something like that. So if I go back to my main graphic, they've been kind of separated. But in order to get them to move, you can do it some ways. I could just move these around individually, or I can do add a little camera. So I'm going to go to New Camera, and we'll keep all this the same and hit OK. So now we're kind of looking through this camera here. So what I'm going to do is, let me go back to left here. So here's my camera. So I want to have it kind of wiggle around a little bit. So I'm going to click on my camera. I'm going to hit P on the keyboard for position. Then I'm going to hold down Alt and Option and click on that little stopwatch. And I'm going to type in wiggle. And here I'm going to put some values. So the first number I'm going to put is the frequency of how much it wiggles. So I'm going to do a very small, like 0.2, and then I'm going to do a comma, and then the next number is the amount. So I'm going to do like 50. Let's see what happens. Okay, and then I'm going to adjust my layers so that they're not cut off. So this one's really big, so I'm going to scale that one down. Keep it right around the comp size. That one looks fine, and I'm going to rotate this one. I'm going to hit W on the keyboard, and come on. There we go, jeez. And that one fits the comp, so that looks good. And then I'm going to test it out. So we can render a little bit of this. So I'm going to hit O on my keypad and watch these and see how they move. So not a lot of movement. So probably we need to make them. Actually, I'm going to up my value here so I can see it moving a little bit quicker. And then I'm going to separate them a pretty good bit, I think. Let's try that. Now they're all, space is all weird again, so. Actually, you know what? I bet I need to blend all these together because there may be some that have black backgrounds, so I need to change my blending mode to, I think, add. Should do it. Let's see. I'm going to change this one to, I think that one's black specks, so now I have this one that has some white specks on it. I'm going to rotate it. Whoa. So let's see if that's kind of okay, so you can kind of see now where you have some movement here. Let me render out a little bit of this. So you can kind of see here that now there's, you can tell there's some different planes in here. You can see some are moving a lot, some are moving a little. So then you could add, some camera blur or something to even make it look more realistic. But that's pretty much how I did it, just adjusting it and changing my depths on my layers, and then trying different numbers. And you can also do something to the rotation too. So if I hit R on the keyboard, I would change the orientation and do the same thing. Wiggle, I think like 0.1 by 1. The wiggle is pretty sensitive, so I don't do a ton of movement there. So you can see kind of wiggling around there. And now it feels like there's some really some depth into that, like we're looking through like dirty glass or something. That was kind of the idea. So hopefully that made sense. After that, I just added some pre-made light leaks that I have. And they're just very they're linear dodge and very low opacity, so they're just some light flickers and things that are going on. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to cover on this one. That's about it. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. Hopefully that was helpful. Hope you have a good day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.